My daughter got married, didn't invite me, yet wanted my beach house for her honeymoon, so when she called asking for the cabin keys, she said, "Mom, we're already married. We only wanted close family there. Just mail the keys and don't be so dramatic about it." I smiled and said okay. 3 days later, I delivered a surprise to their door that made her new husband cry like a baby. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, hit subscribe and tell me your city in the comments. Let me explain how this wild story began. It didn't start with that phone call. It started 8 months ago when my daughter, Emma, brought home Kyle for Sunday dinner. I'm Ruth, 62 years old, and I thought I knew my baby girl completely. We texted every morning and called every evening. She'd tell me about her job at the bank, her weekend plans, even her grocery shopping adventures. When Emma met Kyle, I was so happy for her. She deserved someone who saw how special she was. "Mom, he's incredible," she said that first night, her eyes shining. "He makes me feel like a queen." I'd made my famous pot roast, the recipe Emma begged for every birthday. Kyle walked in wearing designer jeans and carrying expensive wine. He was tall and handsome in that movie star way that usually made me nervous. But Emma looked so happy, I pushed my worries away. At dinner, he asked about my teaching career and seemed really interested in my stories. He praised my cooking, helped wash dishes, and even complimented my garden. Perfect boyfriend behavior that felt a little too rehearsed. "You raised an amazing daughter," he said while hugging me goodbye. "She talks about you constantly." I was proud of Emma. She had a great job, owned her own apartment, and never needed anyone's help with anything. She was smart, independent, and strong, everything I'd taught her to be. But something bothered me that night. Maybe it was how he talked about Emma like she was a prize he'd won, or how he mentioned my beautiful lake cabin 4 times during dinner. I owned a cozy cabin on Lake Tahoe that belonged to my family for 20 years. Emma and I spent every summer there together. "He's very interested in our family traditions," I told my sister Betty the next morning. "That's sweet, Ruth. It shows he wants to fit in." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But Kyle's perfect smile reminded me of my ex-husband David, Emma's father. David had that same charm, that same way of making you feel amazing until he decided you weren't useful anymore. Over the next few months, I watched Kyle slowly take over Emma's entire life. He had opinions about her friends, her work clothes, even our mother-daughter relationship. Our daily calls became weekly, then barely happened at all. "Kyle thinks I should focus more on US," Emma explained when I asked why she seemed different. "He says healthy couples put each other first." That should have been my warning sign. But I told myself Emma was 26 and could make her own choices. If she was happy, I should be happy too. But then came the engagement announcement I learned about on Instagram. I discovered Emma was engaged the same way strangers did, through social media. A photo of her hand with a huge diamond ring and the words, "I said yes, ready for our forever journey together." 58 likes and counting. Friends commenting congratulations. None of them wondering where her mother was because they probably thought I already knew. I stared at that picture for 15 minutes, my tea getting cold. My daughter was engaged and I found out from Facebook. I called her right away. "Oh my God, Mom. I'm so sorry." Emma's voice was breathless and excited. "It just happened last night at this fancy restaurant and we were so caught up in everything. Kyle surprised me and then we went to tell his parents and it got really late and I was going to call you first thing this morning, I promise." "Congratulations, sweetheart," I said, forcing happiness into my voice. "Tell me everything." And she did. For 30 minutes, she talked about the proposal, the ring, how romantic everything was, how Kyle's parents immediately started planning an engagement party at their country club, how they wanted a fall wedding. "When's the engagement party?" I asked carefully. There was silence. "Next Saturday. It's going to be small, just close family and some friends." "Should I buy a new dress?" Another pause. Much longer this time. "Mom, about that. Kyle's family has very specific ideas about these events. His mother planned everything according to their family traditions. I felt something cold in my stomach. What does that mean exactly, Emma? It means, well, it's really just for Kyle's family and a few couple friends. It's not that you're not important. It's just how they do things, and Kyle thinks it's better if we respect their wishes. Kyle thinks. Everything was about what Kyle thinks now. I see. I kept my voice calm. And what do you think? I think Kyle knows his family better than I do, and I want to start off right with them. You understand, don't you? We'll plan something special for just us three soon. That was 8 months ago. We never planned anything special for just us three. In fact, I'd only seen Kyle 3 times since then. And each time he was polite but distant. Like I was Emma's elderly aunt he had to tolerate, not the mother who raised her alone after David left when she was 10. The wedding planning happened without me. Emma would mention details sometimes. They found a venue, hired a photographer, picked flowers. But when I offered help or asked questions, I got vague answers about how Kyle's handling it, or his mom has connections. 4 months ago, I asked about the date so I could request time off from substitute teaching. We're thinking early September, Emma said. Probably the first weekend. Kyle's looking at venues. That sounds lovely. September weather is perfect. Are you thinking about the lake cabin? I could. Oh no, Mom. Kyle wants something more elegant, more upscale than a backyard lake wedding. The rejection hurt more than I expected. Emma had always loved our cabin. As a little girl, she said she wanted to get married there someday, barefoot on the dock with lanterns hanging from the trees. Of course, I said. Whatever makes you happy. But I wasn't invited to look at venues. I wasn't asked about the guest list. I wasn't included in dress shopping that Emma posted about online. Kyle's mother smiling beside her in every single photo. I was becoming a stranger in my own daughter's life. The final shock came exactly 3 weeks ago. Emma called while I was grading papers. A quiet Tuesday that would forever be marked as the day everything changed. Mom, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to stay calm. Nothing good ever started that way, but I put down my pen and listened. What is it, honey? Kyle's been reading about family relationships and healthy marriages. He thinks it's really important that we create independence as a couple from the very beginning. I felt that familiar chill. What kind of independence? Well, he pointed out that I've been depending on you emotionally my whole life, like calling when I'm stressed instead of working through problems with my partner. He thinks that could cause problems in our marriage. Emma, talking to your mother when you're upset isn't unhealthy. It's normal. But it. Kyle showed me articles about women who put their mothers before their husbands and how that destroys marriages. I don't want to be that kind of wife, Mom. I recognized the manipulation immediately. Kyle was cutting Emma off from everyone who loved her, and making her think it was for her own good. What does this mean practically? I asked, scared of the answer. It means we need boundaries. Less phone calls, more space for Kyle and me to build our own life. She hesitated. Kyle thinks it would be better if we spent holidays with his family this year, just to break old patterns. The holidays. We'd spent every Christmas together since David left. It was our tradition. Emma would drive up Christmas Eve and we'd stay in pajamas until noon, drinking hot chocolate and opening presents like she was still 10. I see. My voice sounded strange. Anything else? Actually, yes. Kyle thinks the cabin situation is complicated. What about the cabin? Well, I've always assumed I'd inherit it someday. But Kyle says that puts pressure on our relationship. Like he feels uncomfortable there because it's not really yours, it's yours. And if something happened between us and you, we'd lose our vacation spot. I gripped the phone tighter. Are you asking me to sign the cabin over to you? Not exactly. Kyle thinks it would be better if we found our own place, somewhere that's truly ours. He doesn't want to feel like he's being watched when we're supposed to be relaxing. Being watched by me, the woman who'd barely seen him all year. Emma, that cabin has been in our family for 20 years. It's where you learn to fish, where we've made a million memories together. I know, Mom, and I treasure those memories. But I'm starting a new family now with Kyle, and he needs to feel like we have our own special places. Special places that didn't include me. I ended that call promising to think about everything. But inside I was already planning. Not revenge, not yet. But I was going to find out exactly who Kyle really was and what he really wanted from my daughter. It took me 1 week of careful internet research and some calls to Emma's college friends to discover Kyle's dark secret. Emma wasn't Kyle's first wealthy, naive girlfriend. There was Jessica, whose family owned several successful restaurants. She'd also been isolated from her family before their engagement ended when her mother discovered Kyle's gambling problem. Before Jessica, there was Amanda, whose inheritance Kyle tried to access before her brothers stepped in. Kyle Patterson wasn't just controlling. He was a predator who targeted successful women with family money. And Emma, with her banking job and future cabin inheritance, was his latest victim. That's when I started planning my wedding surprise. The phone call that destroyed everything came 3 days ago on a Wednesday morning while I was watering my garden. Emma's name appeared on my screen, and for a moment I felt that old happiness before remembering how bad things were between us. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded flat and robotic. "Hello, sweetheart. How are you doing? I'm calling to tell you that Kyle and I got married yesterday. It was a small ceremony. Just immediate family and close friends." I stopped breathing. "Yesterday? But I thought you were having a wedding in September." "We decided to do something more intimate. Kyle felt like a big wedding was too much stress, too commercial. We found a beautiful venue in Napa Valley and kept it simple. Simple and secret, apparently." "Congratulations," I managed. "I'm sure it was beautiful." "It was perfect, really." Kyle's parents were there and his brother flew in from Chicago. My friend Rachel was maid of honor and Kyle's best friend Mike was best man. The photographer got some amazing pictures. She was listing details like reading from a catalog, not describing the happiest day of her life. But what hurt most was what she wasn't saying. "That sounds wonderful, Emma. I'm happy for you. Thanks. Oh, and Mom, Kyle and I were wondering if you could send us the cabin keys. We want to spend our honeymoon there since we didn't have time to plan a proper trip." There it was. The real reason for the call. Not to share joy with her mother, not to include me in this huge moment, but to ask for keys to property they'd already decided should be theirs. "The cabin keys," I repeated slowly. "Right. Kyle's really excited to see it. I've told him so much about it over the years. He's especially interested in the renovations you've done and the property appreciation." "Property appreciation. How romantic." "Emma, when you say you got married yesterday, do you mean you had a ceremony or are you legally married?" "Both. We got the license last week and had the ceremony yesterday." "Why?" "Just checking." "And you didn't think to invite your mother to your wedding?" Silence. "Mom, please don't make this dramatic." It was Kyle's decision to keep it small and honestly, after everything we talked about with boundaries, I thought you'd understand. I understood perfectly. My daughter had married a man who convinced her that excluding her own mother was healthy. Kyle had succeeded in isolating Emma from the one person who might have protected her. "So you'll send the keys. We're hoping to drive up Friday." "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make sure you get them." After hanging up, I sat in my garden staring at my roses and thinking about patterns. Kyle followed patterns. He isolated women from families, convinced them to give him access to assets, then probably moved on when he got what he wanted. But Kyle made one huge mistake. He assumed I was just another helpless mother who would quietly accept being cut out. He underestimated what happens when you corner a woman and take away what she loves most. I spent that day making calls and sending emails. By evening, I had everything needed to give Kyle exactly what he deserved. Not revenge, justice. The wedding gift I planned would be more valuable than anything on their registry. It would be the gift of truth. The best gifts are ones that keep giving. So when I drove to Emma and Kyle's apartment Friday morning, I made sure my present would create lasting memories. The package was wrapped in gold paper with a silver bow. Inside was a folder containing several items I'd spent 3 days carefully gathering. Kyle was going to love learning about his past mistakes. I left it at their door with a note. Congratulations on your marriage. Every new husband should know about his wife's family history. With love, Ruth. Then I went home and waited. The call came at 3:22 p.m. Emma's number, but Kyle's voice, and he was screaming. What the hell is wrong with you, you crazy old lady? How dare you send us this garbage? I set down my coffee calmly. Hello, Kyle. I take it you opened your wedding gift. This isn't funny. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. I was confused. Dear, what exactly would you report? That your mother-in-law gave you a wedding gift containing public records and newspaper articles. In the background I could hear Emma crying. Kyle, calm down. Let me talk to her. No, this woman is insane. She's trying to destroy our marriage before it starts. I couldn't help smiling. Kyle, surely you're not upset about me sharing interesting family history. I thought you'd appreciate knowing about connections between our families. The truth was, I discovered something fascinating during my research. It turns out Kyle's father, Robert Patterson, had been involved in a significant business deal with my late husband David back in 1995. A restaurant investment that went very, very badly. The documents in the wedding gift told the complete story. How Robert Patterson and David had been partners in opening a chain of family restaurants. How Patterson had systematically stolen money from their joint business accounts. How David had lost nearly everything, including his marriage to me, because of Patterson's theft. How Patterson had disappeared to Arizona with over $1.5 million, leaving David bankrupt and facing angry investors. But that wasn't the most interesting part. The most interesting part was what I discovered in a court document from 1998. Robert Patterson had been arrested for fraud, but not before confessing to his son Kyle about the money he'd hidden in various accounts. Money that Kyle had been quietly using for years. Money that legally belonged to David's estate, which since David died 2 years ago, now belonged to his only heir Emma. Kyle, I said calmly into the phone. I also included contact information for the law firm that handled David's estate. They're very interested in speaking with you about those accounts your father mentioned in his confession. Apparently, there's quite a bit of money that rightfully belongs to Emma. The screaming stopped immediately. You're lying, he said, but his voice had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by pure panic. I never lie, dear. I'm a retired teacher. We're trained to be precise about facts. But don't take my word for it. I'm sure your father's lawyer in Phoenix will remember you. Mr. Garcia has been very helpful tracking down the paper trail. I heard Emma in the background asking what money I was talking about. Oh, and Kyle, the cabin keys are in the folder too. Consider it my wedding gift to both of you. I'm sure you'll find it relaxing to discuss your family's financial history while enjoying the lake views. Then I hung up and poured fresh coffee. The next few hours were going to be very interesting. Emma called at 7:45 that evening. Her voice was hoarse from crying and I could hear Kyle shouting in the background. Mom, what did you do? I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset, feeling more peaceful than I had in months. I gave you both a wedding gift, honey. Did you read through everything? I read enough. Kyle says it's all lies, that you're trying to break us up. What do you think, Emma? Long pause. I think I need you to explain some things. Kyle's father really stole money from Dad. $1.5 million according to bank records. Your father spent years trying to recover it, but Robert Patterson vanished. The stress contributed to Dad leaving us when you were 10. He couldn't handle the financial ruin. Another pause. And Kyle knew about this money. I could hear Kyle's voice getting closer, clearly furious. The confession suggests he did, yes. The private investigator I hired found records of Kyle accessing several accounts over the past 4 years. He's been living off money that legally belonged to your father's estate. That's impossible. Kyle has a consulting business. He told me he helps small companies with their finances. My heart broke for her. Emma, when's the last time you saw Kyle actually work? When's the last time he had a client meeting or took a business call? Silence. In the background, Kyle was demanding she hang up. The law firm wants to meet with you, sweetheart. As David's heir, you have a legal claim to that money plus interest. They estimate it's worth nearly $3 million now. $3 million. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Kyle married you 2 days after I hired the private investigator. The timing seems rather convenient, don't you think? Now I could hear Kyle clearly, telling Emma I was lying, that I was jealous, that I was trying to destroy their happiness because I couldn't stand seeing her with someone else. Emma, I said gently, ask yourself this. If none of this is true, why is Kyle so upset? If his father was innocent, wouldn't he want to clear his family's name? Wouldn't he be curious about getting justice for what happened to your father? The line went quiet except for Emma breathing. There's something else, I continued. The investigator found records of 2 previous engagements. Jessica Chan in 2020 and Amanda Walsh in 2022. Both ended when their families discovered Kyle's financial lies. Both women had family money. Both were isolated from their support systems before the truth came out. Stop, Emma whispered. I have their phone numbers if you'd like to talk to them. I said stop. The line went dead. I set the phone down and looked at the darkening sky. Tomorrow, Emma would have to decide what to believe. She'd have to choose between the man who isolated her from everyone who loved her and the truth that could set her free. But tonight, Kyle Patterson was going to sleep knowing his carefully built house of lies was crashing down. And I was going to sleep better than I had in months. Emma didn't call back that night or the next day. But Sunday morning I found her sitting on my front steps, wearing the same clothes from Friday. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair messy, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Tell me everything, she said without even saying hello. We made coffee and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where she'd done homework as a child, where we'd planned her college applications. Now we were going to talk about how her husband was a fraud. Kyle left yesterday, she said, staring into her cup. Packed his bags and said he needed time to think. He told me you were poisoning our marriage with lies, and if I believed you over him, maybe we weren't meant to be together. Classic manipulation. Make the victim feel responsible. Where did he go? I don't know. He turned off his phone. But Mom. She looked up with tears in her eyes. I found something. Emma pulled out papers from her purse. After Kyle left, I went through his stuff. His computer, his desk, everything. I found these. She spread printed emails across my table. They were messages between Kyle and someone named Marcus Webb, discussing the Patterson inheritance and maintaining access to hidden accounts. The dates went back 3 years, long before Kyle even met Emma. There's more, Emma said, her voice getting stronger. I called Jessica Chan yesterday, the woman from your report. I raised my eyebrows. What did she tell you? Everything. How Kyle isolated her from family, convinced her to put him on her bank accounts, even had her write a will leaving everything to him. Her father hired a detective and discovered Kyle's pattern. When they confronted him, he disappeared overnight. Emma showed me her phone. Jessica put me in touch with Amanda Walsh too. Same story, Mom. Exact same pattern. He finds successful women with family money, charms them, isolates them, then gains access to their money. I reached over and squeezed her hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Don't apologize. You tried to warn me and I chose not to listen. I chose to believe a man I'd known for months over the mother who raised me. She wiped her eyes. Jessica told me something else. Kyle actually researched us before he, accidentally, met me at that coffee shop. He knew about the cabin, knew about Dad's troubles, knew you were widowed. The coffee shop meeting Emma always thought was fate had nothing to do with fate. What are you going to do? Yes. Emma looked at me with determination I hadn't seen since she was 12 and decided to stand up to a school bully. I'm going to destroy him, she said simply. But I need your help. For the first time in months, my daughter was asking for my help instead of pushing me away. Tell me what you need. The plan we created was beautifully simple. Kyle would come back eventually. Men like him always do when they think the crisis has passed. He'd apologize, promise to change, maybe claim he'd been confused by the accusations. He'd try to smooth things over and get back to his plan of accessing Emma's money. But when he returned, we'd be ready. Emma called the law firm Monday and met with David's estate attorney, Patricia Martinez. The news was even better than I'd hoped. Not only did Emma have a legal claim to the money Kyle's father had stolen, but because Kyle had been accessing those accounts while knowing they contained stolen funds, he could be charged with criminal conspiracy and money laundering. The statute of limitations on the original theft has expired, Patricia explained. But your husband's recent access resets the legal clock. He's been receiving stolen property for years. Patricia also connected Emma with a federal investigator who specialized in financial fraud. Agent Jennifer Martinez had been tracking Kyle's pattern for months, building a case based on complaints from Jessica and Amanda's families. We've been waiting for the right opportunity to move forward, Agent Martinez told us. Your situation provides the final pieces we need. If you're willing to cooperate, we can set up a controlled operation. Emma agreed immediately. She wanted Kyle held accountable, not just for what he'd done to her, but for what he'd done to Jessica and Amanda and who knows how many other women. Wednesday afternoon, Kyle texted Emma. Can we talk? Miss you. Ready to come home. Emma showed me the message. Should I respond? Tell him you miss him too and you're sorry for doubting him. Tell him you realize I was just jealous and causing trouble. She typed the message, her jaw clenched with anger, but her words perfectly crafted to appeal to Kyle's ego. He responded within minutes, saying he'd be home Friday evening and they could start fresh. Agent Martinez briefed us Thursday morning. The apartment will be monitored. Emma, you'll wear a wire and have agents positioned nearby. All you need to do is get him to admit he knew about the stolen money and that he married you to gain access to your inheritance. What if he doesn't confess? Emma asked. Then we proceed with the financial evidence we have, but a recorded confession would strengthen the case significantly. Friday evening came faster than expected. I sat in my living room supposedly reading but actually staring at my phone waiting for updates. Agent Martinez had given me a number to call if Emma needed help. At 8:12 p.m. my phone buzzed. He's here. At 8:45 p.m. He brought flowers and takeout, playing the perfect sorry husband. At 9:23 p.m. He's talking about planning a real honeymoon, asking about my savings account. At 9:58 p.m. Got him to admit he knew about the hidden accounts. FBI moving in now. I set down my phone and poured wine. Kyle Patterson's criminal career was officially over. The local news picked up the story by Monday. Local man arrested in multi-state fraud scheme was the headline in the Miami Herald. They didn't mention Emma by name, but Kyle's mugshot was prominently displayed. He looked exactly like what he was, a common criminal whose charm had finally run out. Emma came over for lunch that day, bringing sandwiches and looking lighter than she had in months. Agent Martinez called this morning, she said. Kyle's been formally charged with conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud across multiple states. His bail was set at $400,000. I nearly choked on my iced tea. $400,000. Apparently he's considered a flight risk since he has access to hidden accounts and a history of disappearing when confronted. His parents can't afford bail and his accounts are frozen. We ate in comfortable silence before Emma spoke again. Mom, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. I set down my sandwich. What is it? How long did you know? About Kyle's pattern, about what he was really after. I considered softening the truth, but Emma deserved honesty. I suspected something was wrong from the beginning, but I didn't have proof until about 4 months ago. That's when I hired the investigator. 4 months ago. Emma nodded slowly. Right around the time I told you about the boundaries conversation. Yes. And you didn't try to warn me directly because you knew I wouldn't believe you. I met her eyes. Would you have? She shook her head. No, I would have thought you were jealous or interfering. Kyle had me so convinced that you were the problem. He paused. How did you know to look into his father's background? I recognized the name Patterson from your father's old papers. When I realized the connection, I knew there had to be more. Emma was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was small and sad. I was so mean to you, Mom. I said terrible things. I excluded you from my own wedding because he convinced me it was healthy. Emma, no. Let me finish. I chose a man I'd known for months over the mother who sacrificed everything to raise me alone. I believed his version of family instead of trusting my own experience. I'm so ashamed. I reached across and took her hand. You were manipulated by an expert predator. That's not your fault. But I should have seen through him. I'm smart, educated, successful. How did I fall for it? Because he targeted those exact qualities. He found a strong woman and convinced her that her strength was weakness. That's what predators do, sweetheart. They don't target weak people. They target people who have something they want. Emma squeezed my hand. How do I make this right between us? You already have. You're here, you're safe, and you're free. That's all I ever wanted. We spent the afternoon looking through old photo albums, Emma pointing out pictures from cabin summers and asking me to tell stories she'd forgotten. It felt like we were rebuilding something precious, brick by brick. That evening, as Emma prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Mom, there's going to be a civil trial. Agent Martinez says the families of Kyle's other victims are filing a lawsuit to recover their losses. They want me to join them. Are you going to? Emma smiled, and for the first time in months, it was the fierce, determined smile I remembered. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to make sure Kyle Patterson never has the opportunity to hurt another woman again. That's my girl, I thought. Welcome back. The trial began 8 weeks later, and it was everything I could have hoped for. Patricia Martinez had been right about the money. Emma was entitled to nearly $3 million in recovered assets, plus interest and damages. But more importantly, the prosecution had built an airtight case that exposed Kyle's entire operation. Jessica Chen flew in from Portland to testify, looking confident in a black business suit. Amanda Walsh drove down from San Francisco, nervous but determined. Together with Emma, they painted a picture of a systematic predator who had perfected his technique over years. I sat in the gallery every day, watching my daughter tell her story with dignity and strength. She testified about the isolation, the manipulation, how Kyle had convinced her to doubt her instincts and cut ties with family. She spoke calmly and clearly, never breaking down, never letting emotion overwhelm facts. Kyle's defense attorney tried to portray him as a confused young man who made poor choices but wasn't a criminal mastermind. That strategy collapsed when Agent Martinez presented evidence of Kyle's detailed research into each victim, including surveillance photos of Emma taken weeks before their accidental meeting. But the most devastating testimony came from Marcus Webb, the man who had been corresponding with Kyle about the hidden accounts. Webb had been arrested as an accomplice and agreed to testify for a reduced sentence. Mr. Patterson contacted me in 2019, Webb testified, asking for help accessing accounts his father had established before his death. When I explained the legal complexities, he told me he was working on a long-term plan to legitimize his access to the funds. What did he mean by long-term plan? The prosecutor asked. He said he was going to marry someone with a legal claim to the money. He showed me newspaper articles about David Thompson's financial losses and explained that Thompson's heir would be the rightful owner of the stolen funds. He said once he gained access to that person's finances through marriage, he could claim the hidden money as community property. Emma turned pale at this testimony. The prosecutor continued. Did Mr. Patterson discuss specific targets for this plan? Yes. He had identified 4 potential candidates based on their family financial histories and personal circumstances. He showed me social media profiles and explained why each woman would be vulnerable to his approach. Was one of those women Emma Thompson? Yes. He said she was the perfect target because she was successful but emotionally dependent on her mother, close to her widowed mom who owned valuable property, and inexperienced with serious relationships. I watched Emma's face as she heard herself described as a target, a mark to be exploited. The pain in her eyes was terrible, but beneath it I saw something else: rage. Pure, focused rage at the man who had studied her vulnerabilities like a predator studies prey. Kyle's attorney objected repeatedly, but the damage was done. The jury now understood that Kyle hadn't simply been accessing stolen money. He had orchestrated an elaborate multi-year plan to manipulate Emma into marriage so he could legally claim assets belonging to her family. When Webb finished testifying, Kyle looked smaller somehow, hunched in his chair like the pathetic criminal he'd always been beneath the expensive clothes and practiced charm. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the courtroom as Kyle Patterson's carefully constructed world collapsed around him. Conspiracy, money laundering, fraud, and a new charge the prosecutor had added based on Webb's testimony: criminal marriage fraud with intent to commit grand larceny. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay full restitution to all victims, totaling over $6 million including interest and damages. Since Kyle had already spent most of the money he'd stolen, this meant he would emerge from prison as broke as his victims had been when he finished with them. Emma testified during the sentencing hearing, delivering a victim impact statement that left half the courtroom in tears. "Kyle Patterson didn't just steal money from me," she said, looking directly at him as he sat shackled at the defendant's table. "He stole months of my life, my relationship with my mother, my ability to trust my own judgment, and my faith in love itself. He convinced me that the people who truly cared about me were the enemy while he was systematically planning to rob me blind." But here's what Kyle didn't understand about the women he targeted: we're not weak. We're not victims waiting to happen. We're strong, intelligent women who were temporarily deceived by an expert liar. And when we discovered the truth, we didn't just walk away. We fought back together. Kyle kept his eyes down during Emma's statement, but I saw his shoulders shake when she said, "I hope you spend every day of your sentence thinking about the lives you destroyed and the women who were strong enough to rebuild them." After the sentencing, we gathered outside the courthouse. Emma, Jessica, Amanda, Agent Martinez and me. The media wanted interviews, but we politely declined. This wasn't about publicity or revenge. It was about justice. Emma hugged Jessica goodbye. "Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. Without your testimony, we might never have gotten a conviction." Amanda squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on your daughter. If you hadn't investigated Kyle's background, he'd still be out there finding new victims." Agent Martinez gave us all her card. "You've helped us shut down a predator who might have hurt dozens more women. The FBI appreciates your cooperation, but more importantly, you should be proud of your courage." As the crowd dispersed, Emma and I walked to our cars in comfortable silence. Finally, she turned to me. "Mom, I have something to ask you." "What is it, sweetheart?" She smiled. That beautiful smile I'd missed for so long. "Would you help me plan a real wedding? Someday when I find someone who actually deserves me, someone who loves you too, because anyone who can't appreciate my mother isn't worthy of me." I felt tears in my eyes. "I would be honored. And Mom, the cabin. I know Kyle made me say those awful things about it not being good enough. The truth is, I've always dreamed of getting married there, barefoot on the dock with lanterns hanging from the trees, just like I used to plan when I was little." "It would be perfect," I said, hugging her tight. As we drove away from the courthouse, I thought about the woman I'd raised. Emma had been temporarily lost, deceived by a master manipulator who had targeted her kindness and turned it against her. But in the end, the strength I'd seen in her as a child had returned. She'd found her way back to herself and back to me. Kyle Patterson had made one fatal error in his calculations. He'd assumed that isolating Emma from her family would make her vulnerable and dependent. Instead, it had only made our eventual reunion stronger, and our combined fury more devastating than he could have imagined. The predator had become the prey, and justice had been served by the very women he tried to destroy. Some wedding gifts really do keep on giving, and the gift of truth, once unwrapped, can never be taken back. Thanks for watching Granny Twisted Tales. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters.